Welcome back, everybody. In this video, we're going to be diving into our next topic. In this particular video, we're going to be focusing on an introduction to the ASDM. So we've taken a look at the CLI and stuff like that, and very briefly introduced how to set up access to ASDM, but not really gone through a full what is the ASDM and stuff like that. So that's pretty much what we're going to do right now. And if I pull up the command line real quick and just verify that do a show run HTTP, make sure that that's all squared away, and it is. So all that's good to go. So we should be able to connect to the ASDM pretty easily. As a matter of fact, if I go ahead and pull up the ASDM launcher, let's see here. Give that a second to. So if you don't already have the ASDM launcher, there is a way to do this. And as a matter of fact, I will pull up the do show interface IP brief. So we're looking at 10.1.10.10. So I'll pull up here. I'll go HTTPS : // and then we'll say 10.1.10.10. So that should automatically redirect us to the web portal of the ASA. And after it decides to load, we should be able to connect to it. And if we, let's see here. I can't ping it, so that's a bad sign. I'm like, wait a minute, it's not working. So let's ping 10.255.10.7. Okay, so let me do this. Show route. Oh, that'd be why. So right here, I don't have a route back. So let's just fix that real quick. Let's go click on OK, and we're going to go and do a log in real quick. Show IP route. We can see it, but it can't see us. So we're right here. This is my subnet that I'm connected on, and I need to be able to ping from that address. And if we look here, there is no advertisement. So what we should be able to do here is show run section router OSPF. That's why. So router OSPF1 network, and we'll type in 10.255.10.0.0.0.255 area 0. So we'll do that, and then here on this side we should be able to get that route momentarily. Actually, let me go up to global config and say no logging enable. Try to clear up some of this output. So okay, so that route has now been reachable. So we fixed that. Go ahead and I will write mem on that, and then close the console window. Yep, that's fine. And then we need to get connectivity to it. Some things have changed, and that's why it's like, well, why is it not working? So ping 10.255.10.7. Let me. Oh, I bet you. I wonder if it has anything to do with the ACL I put on. Show run access group. Yeah, let me do this. Let me type in no and pull this ACL off. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll say no. Let's not do that. Let's do a show access list. And you can see that it's allowing pings and stuff like that, but not that's inbound. So we're actually going to go type in access list here, and we'll say permit, and I'm going to say line 4. You don't actually need to put the line in there, it does that by default. And then we'll say permit IP any for the moment. And so now if I go back to here, maybe that's not it. Let's see here. Let's just pull that ACL off and figure out why I can't ping. That is the address, right? Show IP, show interface IP brief. 10.1.10.10. Show route. Yeah, that's weird that I can't reach it. Let's see, R1. What is R1? Can I reach it? Show IP route. I see a lot of routing, so can I reach 10.1.10.1? I cannot. Well, that's not a good sign. What about the internet? What's the IP address here? Show IP interface brief. So we have 10.1.1.1. So we'll say from here. Okay, I can ping that. Let's do a show IP route. I should have the 10 network in there, and I do. Then I have the 1 network. The 1 network should see it as well, and it does. And then we have ASA1, and that sees it. Interesting. Okay, so show run HTTP. So I'm allowing everything in on the inside, and then show run AAA. Interesting. Okay, that's just weird. So what I'm gonna do in the meantime is I'm gonna pull the that's just weird. I actually want to fix this with you guys watching me so that we could fix this. That's weird. Why is that not working? Because we're saying anything 10 to 50, anything from the 10 network should be able to hit the outside network. Let me do a show run policy map, and then we'll do it just perplexes me that I can't ping through. Trace. I wonder, let me check the router real quick. Why that's not allowing to go through. So let's do a login again. Show IP access list. Show run pipe include interface and access group. Show IP interface brief. Show run interface gig 0/1.10. Yeah, I don't have any ACLs. I'm not blocking any traffic. Or dot Not sure what's actually happening here, which is weird because it should be permitting the traffic, and it's not. Very, very weird. Not really sure why it's not working. It should be, because if I go to test 9 and I do a ping to 8.8.8.8, that works just fine. And if I ping 10.255.10.7, that works just fine. Boggles my mind. So what I'm going to do in this particular case is, it doesn't make a lot of sense why it's not working, because I know it does work because I showed you guys this in a previous video. It's very, very weird. Let me think here. So the connection goes out, the ASA hits it, but for whatever reason I don't get a response. Can I do .1? Get through to that. So then it hits iOS, the iNet router. It is the iNet router. Then it goes to R1 and goes to here. But between the iNet router, between VIOS, which is what iNet is, and R1, that makes no sense. I'm very, very surprised. That it's not passing traffic. So if I try to do it to 10.1, 10.1.10.1, it dies. It's like it won't pass through the routers. So it should get, I should get a reply. Let me do this. Instead of -D, just do just. It should show up 10.1.1.1 and it doesn't. Oh, you know what? I bet you it's a routing problem. I've had this problem in the past. So let me look at iNet and look at the show IP route. Show IP OSPF neighbors. Okay, so no, it's not a routing problem because I only have two peers. I have the connection to my router and I have the connection to router 3. Or, I'm sorry, 10.1.1.3. Oh, wait a minute. So I have a connection to 10.1.1.3, which is R1. Yes. Show IP OSPF neighbor. Oh. No, that's a neighbor ID. That's the neighbor ID. That's just the... we go back to iNet. That's this guy's IP address. So if I go back to interface loopback 0 and type an IP address of, I will say, I'm going to say 10.10.10.10/32, and I go in here and I say clear IP OSPF process. Yes. I want to resync the neighbors. And I'm going to go on router 1 and do the same thing. So config T interface loopback 0. IP address on here is going to be 1.1.1.1/32. And then do clear IP OSPF process. Yes. Because what I want to have happen is I want the routers to show up with a router ID that I'm going to be able to recognize. And then the ASA1, know what I can do is I can actually turn off do show run router OSPF, show run router OSPF, and I can, so it's still enabled on that prefix. So I'll just go to R1, and then on interface gig 0/0 IP OSPF 1 area 0. Excuse me, area 0. And then I can say no router do show run section BGP, and for the hold on, I think that just fixed it. Yeah, see, all of a sudden my connection is there. So let's see what I do. So I enabled OSPF. Was that the problem? Yeah, so as soon as I enable the link, but if I go back to my home router and I look at the show IP route, I have a 10.1.10 network in here. So that doesn't make any sense. But all of a sudden I can reach, actually if I ping 10.1.10.1, I can ping it. If I ping .10, I should be able to ping that, which is really weird. So what I'm going to do is, for the sake of argument, I'm going to leave that enabled because it's working now. So that means and I can ping that. So now I should be able to go to here and resync, and there it pops up. So we're going to go advanced, and then we're going to add exception. We're going to say confirm exception, and then we are delivered to the web portal of the ASDM, or the web page of the ASDM. So if I wanted to, I could install the ASDM launcher, this is download it, stuff like that. Just follow the prompts for that and go from there. So that's really what I wanted to show you on that. All of that rigmarole for that. Now if we go back over here, and it's actually good that I did that, because now I should have no problem connecting into this like so. Cisco, click OK. We get the OK button. So all that good stuff. One thing I noticed about my shirt too, this M right here, you got yeah, that's one second. This M right here and this M right here, I don't know if you guys can tell the difference. It looks like one really big M. It's actually two M's right there, two different shades of green, but because of the fact that I've got a green screen, this shows up as white. So, and so does my Mountain Dew can. It's primarily all green, so all you see is the Mountain Dew and some of the that type of stuff. So it's actually pretty cool. I thought that was interesting to see. At any rate, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go through and look at some of the dashboard and talk about what you're seeing here and what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and disappear. And so dashboard here on the left hand side, you have the ASAs that you've connected to in the past. So as you can tell, everything in my local network. And then firewall dashboard, you have some basic understanding of what's going on. So the host name, the versions of ASA code, the version of ASDM code, the mode of the router or the firewall right now, it's in routed mode. We have about 8 gigs of total flash, which is more than enough space for anything we need to do. How long the ASA has been up, the device type is ASAV, the number of CPUs is 1, and how much memory is about 2 gigs, which is going to be enough for us to do web VPN and things like that. Now down here, the VPN summary, we have no VPNs configured at the moment or up and running. That will change when we get through all of firewall, but it's going to take a little while for us to do that. So I'm going to be focusing on the areas that I'm already familiar with, which means that we're going to be hitting firewall on ASA and iOS, and then once all that is done, then we're going to shift over to VPN and knock all that out, because that'll be 2 different exams I can go focus pretty heavily on. And then at a point in the very near future after I do that, then what we will end up doing is diving into some ICE, some WSA, ESA, and the capabilities for getting firepower up and running. So all that stuff is to come. At any rate, so we have the total resource utilization here. So memory utilization right now is at about 60% or so. CPU usage is pretty negligible for the most part, and about 4%. Core usage, not much going on. Not even sure how that calculates. And we have details. We don't really have anything going on. So yeah. Then on the upper right hand corner here, we have all the interfaces that are enabled. We have the outside interface, and the VLAN and the DMZ, and how much data is going through them, stuff like that. You see the connections per second usage that are coming for the traffic, and the outside interface. We don't have a whole lot going on. Firewall dashboard wise, still not a whole lot going on, and we're going to be talking about a lot of this stuff as we go further on down the road. So starting at the very top here, well, there are access rules. Once we get access rules deployed and get them rolled out, then the sessions, we're going to be looking at threat detection in the inspection videos and how that comes into play. But for right now, none of that is configured. Here on the configuration tab, we have just the base setup. So if I wanted to gain access to the ASA via the ASDM, this would be one of those things where, as you're doing it, you could do the initial startup wizard if you wanted to, and then just go next, and be finally done. I think it's like 10 clicks, and you're squared away. But we're not going to be doing that. Yes, I want to exit the wizard. Interface setting wise, we've taken a look at all the different interface types. If you click on add, there's interface, redundant interface, VNI if you want to do VXLAN. There's VTI if you want to do a IPsec enabled GRE tunnel. So just to be clear, ASA doesn't support GRE tunnels. What it does support is it's a VTI tunnel, and I'll explain this more in detail once we get into VPN, because that's where that really comes into play. But basically, it's an IPsec. It's a tunnel in the simplest terms, and instead of GRE as the encapsulation, it has to be bound with crypto. So you have to be running IPsec in order for it to work. Then you have a bridge group interface. If we were to, when we do transparent mode firewalls, that'll be coming up in an upcoming video sections, and then we'll do the same thing with high availability. So we have our interfaces that we've created and stuff like that. As you can see down here, we have enable traffic between two or more interfaces which are configured with the same security levels. We've got that deployed, and we also have enable traffic between two or more hosts connected to the same interface, so which is the intra interface. So the way that they word it in the ASDM is actually a little bit more palatable and understandable than it is on the CLI, but it gets the job done. Now, if we come down here, we have traffic zones. We'll be talking about that later on. Now, we do want to discard changes. Traffic zones, we don't have any deployed yet, but if we were going to, this is where they would be going in. And then VXLAN, same concept. If we wanted to start dealing with VXLAN, we could do that, where you could basically tunnel traffic between the ASAs over a routed infrastructure. This is good for data centers and stuff like that. We're not going to be dealing with that at all in this section. Just to be clear on a lot of this stuff, we're going to be doing some... this is more of a CCNP level deep dive, not a CCA level deep dive. So there are going to be things that we just pass over and not talk about. But I definitely think it's a good idea if you have the opportunity to play around with any of these technologies that we're not covering, just to have a thorough walkthrough. I think that'd be a good idea, because then I'll be able to take note of, okay, well, I know I didn't cover VXLAN, I know I didn't cover this, or this, so that when I get done with CCNP security, I can go, okay, let's look at the things that I haven't covered, go cover them, and then I can do a once over, maybe 2 or 3 times, a full complete pass over the blueprint for the CCIE security exam, and be done with that. So it gives me a lot of flexibility in that regard. Then when it comes to routing, we've taken a pretty deep dive so far, I would say. We've got, right now we're at 3 solid videos of nothing but routing, and it's pretty basic routing. We're not going to go into any of the weeds. Static routes, route maps, prefix rules, OSPF, OSPF version 3, RIP, EIGRP, BGP, ISIS, BFD, multicast. So a lot of this stuff has been, we can cover it if we want to. They're more peripheral topics. So we've talked about the main routing protocols, EIGRP, OSPF, and BGP, and have them operational. It's just a matter of, okay, now that they are operational, that we should make sure that we can do them. So we also have the device name and password here that's already been set, ASA1, but we don't have an enable password or a telnet password, so we can configure that later on down the road. We're actually going to be managing the starting to look at managing the ASA in an upcoming video and section. So we'll be taking a look at basic device settings and taking a deeper dive with AAA and stuff like that and how that comes into play. I have Identity Services Engine running on, where is it? If I go to right here, it's running right here, and if I log in, I have ICE operational at the moment. So it would not be very difficult in any stretch of the imagination to get ICE enabled here. We're not going to be taking a look at ACS. I don't see ACS on the CCNP security blueprint at all. So I'm not going to be diving into ICE or to ACS. I will be diving into ICE here in this course, some in the VPN course, and then obviously and as you can tell, I was playing around with 802.1x quite a bit. So we'll be playing around with the work centers. We'll be playing around with the device administration here. So we'll be configuring that type of stuff down the road, but that'll be coming up actually sooner than later, but we'll be covering that later on. Going back to the ASDM, this will be how we can do some of that. System time, we can go click on the clock, we can click on the clock itself, and right now the time is actually incorrect. So we're actually going to go change that real quick while we're here. And I'm going to scroll up here, we're going to go minus, I believe it's 6, puts us in Central Time, Chicago, and Winnipeg, and we're going to go ahead and say apply. This is the command that's going to send to the ASA, and we're going to click on send. And now that we look, that is a accurate time. It is a little after 1 a.m. and I'm a night owl though, but that's okay. NTP, if we wanted to have NTP servers, that's where we would go. Now on the bottom left hand corner here, we have the different modules that you would be able to interact with the ASDM. So this is device setup. The next one is going to be firewall. Now if you happen to have a physical ASA, and that physical ASA is, if that physical ASA is working with, plugged into, or I'm sorry, if you have the physical ASA and you install the Firepower IPS, or Firepower, the module, if you install that, the Firepower into the module on the ASA, then point the get all that set up to work with the ASDM. You'll actually see another whatever you call this over here, this tile or section on the left hand side here. You would actually see, I don't know if that can be, there's really not a whole lot of options here, but if you were to enable a Firepower, then you'd have a Firepower option here. And you can manage Firepower nodes from either the ASDM or through the Firepower Management Center. That's where we're going to be playing around with it, but that'll be down the road. I'm actually looking at buying a 5506X and deploying Firepower services on it so that I can get some more hands-on experience with it. But so now we're in the firewall tab here on the left. Starting from the top left and going down, we have our access rules, so you have some ACLs. So here we have some interfaces and stuff like that. By default, there is a there's an implicit incoming rule, but it's these are the security levels that I've talked about in the past, where you have any source to any less secure network is going to be permitted, but So it says permit all traffic to less secure networks. So what will end up happening is traffic going from the inside to the DMZ will be permitted, but traffic from the DMZ to the inside will not be permitted. So we're going to be talking about dealing with access rules and NAT in upcoming videos, and that's where we're going to be just breaking down how you can override that. There's also a global ACL. The global ACL is going to gets applied inbound on all interfaces, and by default it's got to deny any its configuration is deny IP any effectively. Now if I go in here, it's there, but it's not actually doing anything per se. And the reason why it's that way is if the best way I can explain it to you is, from my understanding, is once you enable an access rule on an interface, inbound on an interface, what will end up happening is whatever the logic is in this ACL, if it's a permit, it'll be permitted through. But if it's not there and you use the global ACL, which you have to my knowledge, you have to manually define. So if we were to go to the CLI and go to ASA1, and I actually want to take a quick road trip here, or right-hand turn, show run section BGP. Okay, this is, I think, part of our problem that we were having earlier is I never advertised this network into into BGP. So, let me go do that real quick. We're going to type a router BGP1 address family IPv4 and type in network of 10.1.10.0 mask is /24. Now if we go to router iNet, we're still going to get the route, which we are 10.1.10, but it's an OSPF learned route. So, but I don't want to dive too deep into that right now. I want to focus on the rest of the ASDM. I just had that thought as I'm sitting here going, oh, I wonder if that has something to do with it. But anyway, just my scroll moment. So actually, that's the whole purpose of what I wanted to show you. On the ASA, if we type in the global access list, let's see, show access list. So if I was to take access group ACL trace route, we talked about this in a previous video. If I was to apply this, notice how the global, so I say global and hit the enter key, that's going to apply it inbound on all interfaces. Now by default it's deny everything. So if there's with no security with no access lists in place, the security levels are your base flow manipulator from low to high. I'm sorry, from high to low. If you go through and don't have an ACL inbound, which is what the first one up here is listing off right here, this permit traffic from all traffic to less secure networks, so from high to low. If you deploy an ACL at the global level, it's going to apply that inbound on every interface, which can be detrimental to everything. So if the global ACL is working and enabled, traffic has to pass through that, and it's technically the second step. So there's the logical flow would be in on an interface, then you hit the global ACL, then you hit the outside interface. You can actually set up all three, and I'm going to walk you guys through how that would look down the road once we get to that point. But it's normally not advisable to use a global ACL unless you absolutely have to. But at any rate, so yeah, that's just some of that little details that I wanted to cover with you guys real quick. NAT rule wise, we have no NAT rules in place, but we will be playing with NAT. We will be pulling up web browsers and stuff like that. I will be demonstrating how to do all that type of stuff and how to SSH into or telling it into a router and stuff like that through a NAT, and how to allow traffic through and the different types of NAT that are out there, stuff like that. Service policies, this is good for two different things. One, for deep packet inspection, whether it's a layer 3 or layer 4 check using the a access list that calls a source and destination IP, the transport, whether it's TCP, UDP, or some other variable, transport, SIP, or ICMP, or GRE, or whatever it might be, because transport is can be pretty much any subset of IP. And then you have your source and destination ports. The destination port and the transport. So if it's GRE, the IP protocol of 47, to a destination of 10.1.1.1, you know it's a GRE tunnel trying to go to 10.1.1.1. If you see TCP port 80 as the destination port, you know it's a web connection. So that's how application layer inspection is able to get in there and figure that out. If you want to take that a step further with layer 7 inspection, or application level inspection, or deep packet inspection, excuse me, that's where both of those would come into play here. As you can see here, I configured the this class dash default. If I click on edit here, I unset the connection settings right here, the decrement time to live for a connection. If I click on OK and set apply, it's going to send this command, which we did this in a previous video. So if you click on reset, it'll not apply that command. So resetting doesn't reset the box like a reload will. It just takes whatever command you were going to send and it discards any of those changes. AAA rules, we don't have any currently applied, but we do have a and device management. We could do authentication rules. We technically do have an authentication rule, and that is right here. If we do a show run AAA, we have one here, which is just the allow HTTP in. It doesn't show up here. Not exactly sure why. That might be a device management type thing, which users, this will be under management access and HTTP. So we've enabled it and we're calling the local database. So on the users and AAA access, we are allowing this and we're saying use a local database. So that's where that's coming in. So it technically is not a firewall rule. It's a device management rule. And then we have filter rules coming down through here. We'll talk about how that comes into play later. Ether type rules, if we wanted to dive into any type of layer 2 inspection, like if you wanted to create an ether type rule, we could say permit, and we'd have to know the ether type value. Like if we wanted to drop BPDU or some other type of traffic or permit it, we could do that, and we'd have to apply it to a specific interface and which direction we want to apply it to. We could dive into that as well. And public servers, we don't have any public servers deployed, and I'm probably going to skip over this, just cover it at a high level maybe. URL filtering servers, same thing. Threat detection, we'll be covering this in the inspection section. We'll actually dive into how this actually works and go through a couple of examples of it. Identity options, we're going to be definitely dragging in Active Directory into this down the road, and we'll be doing that in a manner of allowing certain access in. So like for instance, doing like a cut-through proxy or something along those lines. We'll be skipping over identity by TrustSec, only because of the fact that that's going to be in an upcoming section in the actual what will equate to the 208 exam, which is the ICE exam. TrustSec is deployed there because you can deploy TrustSec, the SGTs and how the firewall rules and the ACLs come into play through ICE. We have the VM attribute managed agent. We'll be talking about that briefly later. Botnet traffic filtering and objects. We'll be talking about how you can, with access rules, how you can do different objects like network objects and service objects, and how you can group them together and stuff like that. Then we have the inspection For classful inspection, we also have the inspect maps. If we wanted to do deeper levels of inspection, we could definitely dive into that as well. Regular expressions, if you want to match on specific attributes of communication. Here's some examples of stuff that you may want to leverage, like there's Gator, and there's let's see. Here we have Yahoo Messenger, we have Kazaa. So really all a regular expression is you're basically creating like a string of characters that you're going to match on lowercase and uppercase. If you see big K or little k, big A or little a, so on and so forth going down the road. So it says Kazaa network. So if you see anything going to that destination, you want to drop it. Something along those lines. You can create your own as well. Then there's TCP maps if you want to create any of them for any reason. Time ranges to apply stuff towards will be definitely, we'll take a check with that. And then when we dive into unified communications, we go ahead and minimize objects. Dive into unified communications. We're going to briefly cover some of this basic stuff, but nothing really too in depth. And then advanced is more of a how you would handle different sub-functions of the ASA. So anti-spoofing, certificate management if you're going to be running multiple certificates, local certificate authority. Once we get into VPN, that'll become something that we're going to be spending a little bit more time on, because we're going to need to understand things like how, if you're going to deal with a self-signed certificate, how are you going to use a ASA or a firewall to do that? So we have the local CA, we can go CA server, and so it's taking us to that area where we can turn on the certificate authority server, and we can create all the variables we want. If we want to send the information to an SMTP server, we could do that as well. But there's a lot of functions here that we can add in here in terms of what's going on and stuff like that. So the idea here is for the ASA and for the iOS router to both function as a certificate server, so that we can generate a certificate, we could pass that off to nodes in the network, and then once those nodes in the network have it, they can use that certificate to authenticate other endpoints in the network. So we'll be taking a look at how that comes into play. But beyond that, that's pretty much where we're going to dive in when it comes to firewalls. Device setup, we've been through a good portion of that already to get some basic functionality working. We got the bulk of the routing out of the way, stuff like that. And then firewall is coming up. We're going to be focusing on device management next, where we focus on management access and how we do AAA, stuff like that. Take a look at uploading some files and stuff like that, some basic stuff. There is some command line things that you can do, like use a CLI prompt, what options you have, stuff like that. And then there's virtual access. You can create a telnet server or an HTTP server if you would like. We'll talk about how that kind of comes into play. File access is going to be pretty simple. You have FTP and stuff like that you can to enable. You can also upload and download stuff to the ASA. That's going to be more applicable to the VPN section, but it's still going to have some applicability here depending on what's going on. From a licensing perspective, we're not going to really do any licensing here, but if we were going to do that, that's where that would come into play. If you wanted to upgrade the code, this is where you would do that. And then you could map it to a specific file and then upgrade the operating system. When it comes to like high availability and scalability, we have the failover. We could talk about how that would come into play and create all that. Logging, we're also going to be talking about how you can point to a log server and how that can come into play. Again, we will be talking about CWS, Cloud Web Security, and how that operates. That's on the CCNP blueprint, but it's more of a high-level discussion about it. And then we have, again, certificate management. We have not done DHCP yet. We have not done any DNS yet. And under advanced, a lot of this stuff is going to be just other aspects of it, like the priority queue if you want to do QoS and stuff like that. So a lot of this stuff comes into play in just knowing how it works and what's going on inside of the network. So we're going to be taking a pretty decent look at a lot of this stuff. The remote access VPN and then the site-to-site VPN tabs, we won't be looking at those until we get into what's the equivalent of the 209 exam, so for VPN. And it's going to be a lot of VPN. There'll be a little bit of a breakdown as to what some of the cryptography stuff is about, but not too terribly involved. This is going to be mostly how to implement it and stuff like that, go from there. But there will be some theory behind the scenes and what's going on and how it works and all that good stuff that goes along with it. But yeah, it's good stuff. If you are excited like I am to dive into this stuff, that's pretty much exactly what the expectation is, and stuff like that. So our next section is going to be in device management. We're going to be focusing on that for a decent portion of the next several topics. And stuff like that. Once we get through device management, we're going to skip over some things like high availability. We're not going to be doing that right away. Doing transparent mode firewall, we're not going to be doing that right away. We're going to get through the bulk of this and then all of firewall, and then we'll come back to that because those are just optimizations. Everything else we're talking about here in this section between device management and firewall is specific to how the ASA operates as a firewall and how you can optimize it and stuff like that. So that's pretty much what you guys can expect to see as we go along. Now the next section here, next tab at the top, we have monitoring. Now there's a lot of monitoring you can do, and you have interfaces that you can monitor. You have, obviously we'll be able to monitor how that's a lot of the stuff comes into play, like DHCP, what the server table looks like, the binding databases look like. The interface graphs, if we wanted to look at what's happening in operational, stuff like that. And then we'll be obviously jumping over botnet traffic filter, I'm sorry, VPN, but we'll be taking a look at botnet traffic filter. We'll be looking at routing. If I want to look at the routes, there they are. There's all your routes. So you have all these routing tables, or routes in the routing table, and you can see how they're coming in. So if you need to look at what's happening, there they are. We'll be looking at some of the properties here as well. Just a high-level breakdown as to what's operational and stuff like that. And then from a logging perspective, this will come in handy when we're not on the CLI, when we're looking at logging. So an example of this would be enable logging, click on continue, send, and then it's going to pop up this little guy. Click on view, and it opens up at another web page. But what this would allow us to do is, for instance, if I was to pull up the server, and if I was to hit the trace route to google.com, what you're going to see is the real-time logs. So this is be no different than what we saw in the CLI, but this is going to let us see exactly how this stuff comes into play. So I'm actually going to I'll leave that running, and you can see down in the bottom half here where we're getting the log is coming into play. So if I go back to the configuration tab right here, the configuration tab, and then I click on I'm on firewall. If I go to the top here and I click on service policy rules, and I click back on here, and I right click and I say edit, and I come down to connection settings, and I click on decrement this and click on OK, and then I click on apply. It applies that command, and then since that's applied now, what you should see this isn't going to fix, that's only for the first hop though. Now if I was to take this access rules here, I don't have any really deployed yet. So if I was to come in here and say refresh, it's going to go ahead and download any updates that are happening. And I haven't made any changes yet. But if I was to come into... I don't have any objects created either. Access rules, if I was to come in here and say add access rule, and I want to apply it to the outside interface, and I wanted to create a source and say I want to permit the traffic first and say from any source and any destination, and I wanted to set the protocol to be ICMP, for example. I can come in here and say that and click on this. Now it's going to switch it over to ICMP. I can click on OK, and then I can come in here into more options, and I can dive into the source service. So I can bring this over, and I can say down through the bottom, I should be able to specify echo, or sorry, that's the source. I need to be able to modify that's for TCP or UDP only. So I need to be able to come in here, and so from the service perspective, I should be able to is it going to give me the option? Oh, here we are. Here's what I was looking for. Right in here. So we're going to have unreachable, add that. Actually, let me go ahead and pull all this out. I can say unreachable, add, and then time exceeded, I can add that. And then I can click on OK, and click on OK, and then I can go ahead and say we're going to apply that ACL, and actually I can come in here and edit it, and I don't really have a name for it, but if I was to give it a description, I could. And what it's going to do is I can go and say OK and click apply, and this is the command. It's going to say object group ICMP type, which is a dynamic map. DM, it's always going to give it a DM, which means you can say no, it's a device manager inline ICMP, ICMP object time exceeded, ICMP object unreachable. Then it's going to create an outside access in line 1 extended permit. It's going to call this ACL. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on send. And as you can see, as soon as I did that, we start to get the replies back. And that's only because of the fact that the ACL is working now. We've already done this before. I just want to show you the ASDM version of it so that we have that. Now, if I was to go to monitoring and I was to click on logging, no, I'm sorry, is it interfaces or is it? Would be properties. Doesn't really have, it's not a dynamic ACL or a PPOE client. Notice how at the bottom, every time I make a click in here, it's got to refresh it. But logging, and we're on the real-time log viewer. So if I was to go back to here and hit the up arrow and try this again, you would see on the left-hand side how the outputs would show up. Every time you'd see a UDP connection going outbound and an ICMP coming back in. That is why we need the ACL for the traffic to do what it's supposed to do. And all of that is working out quite well. And you can see the ASA does show up in the transit path. So it is working the way that it's supposed to do. I'm going to go ahead and stop that. But right now, that's basically how that comes into play. Beyond that, ladies and gentlemen, that is pretty much it for this video. I didn't realize we were an hour in, but this is all the stuff that we need to understand when it comes to the basic operations of the ASA. So until next time, guys, thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll catch you guys in the next video.